Hi everybody, I'm so excited today to show you how to use some of the tools that you'll need to use in your quilting. And I've been working on this quilt today. It's really a cute little quilt and I want to finish it for you. I'm down to the bottom, and oftentimes I start at the top of the quilt so you don't get to see when I'm at the bottom of the quilt. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to show you what happens when we get to the bottom of the quilt. Now I have stitched in a ditch all the way down to this bottom, and I know that my machine will be able to stitch clear down off at the end of the quilt, so I've rolled it to that point, and I'm going to finish the stitch in the ditch. Now I have stitched to this point right here in the ditch, and so I'm going to show you how I'm going to start there. I'm going to start about 1/4 of an inch up from where I ended because I don't have any security stitches there. I just ended my stitches. So I'm going to come back about 1/4 of an inch, and I will put my needle down there and take about 6 little stitches right in that ditch. And by the way, one of the best hints I can give you is to use a darker thread when you're stitching in the ditch, just a little bit darker thread. And if you'll use, like I know that my seam is pressed this direction, most of the seams are generally pressed to the outside. So I'm going to use the burgundy thread because I'll be staying right in the ditch on the burgundy side. Now I'm going to show you 2 different rulers that you can use. This one is the 2x12, and I really like this one. This is the one that I learned with. And you'll see how my hands are flat. Don't ever use something to stitch in the ditch that you have to hold on to a handle, because your hand will be cramped when you go to bed that night. When you're stitching in the ditch, you also want to do it with 12 stitches to the inch. So I've got 12 stitches to the inch, and I place my ruler 1/4 inch away from the seam, and then I just slide the ruler down. And you can see my right hand is barely holding on to the machine. So as I'm stitching, I'm not holding on really tight. I'm just propelling the machine with that right hand. The left hand is doing all the work. I'll come to the corner, and I'll stop the machine because I want to talk about this as we're going to go across horizontally. If you have a foot like this one, then you can put your ruler right there in front of that foot. Or you can put it around behind if it's close to you so that you're not leaning over the quilt. You can put it behind. Or you may even try just freehanding across there. And again, if you'll look at my hands, you'll see that it's a very light touch. In fact, it's just 2 fingers. And I'm right in that ditch. Or you can put the ruler in front like this, 1/4 of an inch away, and then just slide the machine along the side of the ruler. When you're stitching in the ditch, you definitely want to have a very light hand with your right hand as you're moving the machine. So I'll come all the way over to the other corner. And I always do this inside border first. I finish this inside border before I'd finish on the outside. And then we'll come up the side. There we go. And I can see where I finished, which is just about right there in that corner. So I'll go a few stitches beyond that. Then I'll come over, grab my thread, go down and take a stitch in the same place, and then I will cut my thread there, and I cut that right off, making sure I don't have any whiskers. There we go. Now we're going to be doing some diagonals, and I can see that I stopped stitching. I left a little bit of a tail there to show myself that I need to start stitching just on the other side of this. And this time I'm going to use a different ruler. This is the 5x8 ruler. So it's a little bit wider, and so many people like this one because they can keep their hand completely flat on it. So I'll show you how I use that. Now you can see I have that thread coming out there. That's where I ended. And so I'm going to about a foot width in on it. I'm going to come in and take some security stitches right along there till I get to that area where those 2 stitches are, and then I'll place my ruler again with my hand flat right next, about 1/4 of an inch from that seam. Now here I have an option, because I do want to stitch in the ditch all the way around this little square, and for me it's easier to go around the little square. I'll show you what I'm going to do here. I go on the square there and down this side, and then I'll come back, because I have to go on every one of these seams, and that will secure that. And while I'm there, I just reverse and come back. That double stitching on the other side is not even going to show. So you can see I just keep my hand completely flat here, and my right hand is again just propelling the machine as I come up to this square. Now when I get up to this square, I'm going to go all the way around it. You can see that the ruler is always on the left side of the foot. In other words, I never put the ruler over here on the right side, because that would be really dangerous. So always on the left side, and the left hand does all the controlling. You can see even on these diagonals, it's not a problem. My hand is nice and flat. My right hand is just propelling the machine. I'm going to go up this little square and down this side where the seam is, and then complete that seam and back. It's much better to have a double seam very neat than it is to have another start and stop. Go right up to that point and just a little bit beyond that, and then the rest is already stitched in the ditch. Now around the outside of the quilt, I will start down here. Let me cut all my threads here. There we go. So I'm going to start on the outside now, because I've stitched the inside border. So I'll start over here. Right on the edge of the quilt, make sure that you don't stitch in 1/4 of an inch. You want to stay right on the edge. Now you can see that I have tape over the pins here, and I do that to protect me and to protect my clothes, so that they don't get, you know, the pin can sometimes make a hole in your clothes. And so I'm just going to take these pins out as I go and peel this edge back down. So I come over here like this, because I want to be right on the edge of the quilt as well. In fact, I could take out a few pins in between. It seems like it's a little bit more convenient if you take out a few pins and leave some pins in. I still want the same pull on the top, because the reason I pin my top there is so that I have control over the amount of fullness in that top. So I will come across like this, again staying right on the edge, and then when I get to a pin I can just pull it out like that. There we come across. If you have any extra fullness, if that border had extra fullness in it, then you could push in front or behind of that needle. Luckily, this quilt is really very flat, but pushing on either side of the throat plate, you can ease some extra fullness in. Okay. There we go. And since I have stitched in the ditch on the inner border, there's no reason why I can't continue up this border. You can see that I had my pins in there. I was just holding everything in place and holding my quilt square while I was finishing all the stitch in the ditch on the inside. There we go. Okay, we've stabilized the entire quilt, and I've shown you how to go off the edge of the bottom, and it's completely stitched all the way around the quilt. So it's this is what we call stabilizing the quilt, and we do that with our stitching in the ditch or going around the applique. In some large areas on the quilt, you may even need to baste across them.